Okay, so last time we were here, we did our little introduction to trigonometry and talked about the three trig ratios or trig functions. And what is the mnemonic device you can use to remember them? SOHCAHTOA. Excellent. SOHCAHTOA, to find a missing link. All right? Now, remember that means the sine of whatever angle you have is equal to the opposite over the what? Hypotenuse. The cosine of whatever angle you have is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Or the tangent of whatever angle you have is equal to the
opposite
over adjacent. There you go. Okay? All right. Now remember, these are going to be angles, and they're going to be given to you. And everything that we do is going to be based from that angle, right? So when we're doing triangles, if I know this angle, this far side over here is the opposite. This long slanted side is and this one right next to it would be the adjacent. Move the angle, it changes things around. The only one that never changes is the hypotenuse, right? But opposite and adjacent can bounce around a bit, yeah? So pay close attention to where your angle is located so you know which things to use. So what we're going to do today is we're going to use this information to create an equation, because if you notice, they all have equal symbols in them. What does that tell you? They're all equations, yes. So we're going to use these equations in order to be able to solve to find missing pieces. And what we're going to concentrate on today is how to find a missing piece of length. And if I say length, does that ever involve the angle?
No.
No, that means the length from the sides. Okay? All right. Okay? Remember, if you're only dealing with sides, that's Pythagoras, right? But if you have an angle, that's when you know you have to use the trig. Keep that in mind because they will be mixed together on the assessment and in general, right? Right now we're just concentrating on the trigonometry.
Okay. Wait, I remember what I was
Okay.
So what's the difference between finding between this and the other thing that the educational system?
Right, we used the Pythagorean formula before because we knew the lengths of sides. We didn't have an angle. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. Yes, but this time we're not going to have that. We're going to have an angle to use, and that's the difference. Okay, we'll look at them and you'll see. Okay, no, if you know an angle, then you have to use trig. If you know sides, then you use Pythagoras. Well, you're not going to know two sides. That's the point. Okay? All right, so let's go to the lesson, and we're going to walk through this so that you can see exactly what this looks like and how to use it. Okay? So, what we're going to do is we're going to use the trigonometric ratios to work out the lengths of the sides of a right-angled triangle. All right? So by the end of the lesson, you're going to have to be able to identify which trig ratio to use to find the side length. Which trig ratio you use is dependent on the information you're given, right? Where the angle is do you know the opposite? Do you know the adjacent? Do you know the hypotenuse, right? Each one of those. So you're going to have to find out which one to use. And then you're going to have to calculate those using the ratios and solving an equation. Okay? So real quickly, how do you know that something is an equation?
An
Equal symbol. So what do you look for first? Brackets. Come on, guys. Brackets. You're not going to have any. All right? You're going to have some, but they're associated with the angle. I'll show you the difference in a minute. All right? Then what do you look for next? That's order of operations. For when you're solving an equation, what do you look for next?
The odds.
Fractions. Eliminate any fractions. And remember, a fraction is a division problem, so how do I eliminate division? Multiplication. Then you want to get all your variable terms on one side and your constant terms where? On the other side. And then divide by the coefficient if there is one. Okay? So you're going to have to solve equations. Those steps and those rules, guys, never go away, and it's only going to get worse if you don't memorize them. So memorize them, eh?
Memorize what?
The steps for solving an equation. Okay. Now, many times when you start with these, especially with an application, they're not going to look like a right triangle. So if you had this triangle like a house here, notice that they've split it in half to create the right triangle. Keep that in mind. There's foreshadowing here, giving you a little peek into your future. Okay? All right, so first, remember the ratios. So, opposite over what? Hypotenuse. Ka, adjacent over? Hypotenuse. Toa, opposite over adjacent. Excellent. If you have any two of those three pieces, then you can use the trig function to solve for the third. And today what we're going to be doing is looking at sides. Later we're going to be looking at finding the angle when you have the sides.
Did we just look at how to find angle?
No. Yeah, we looked at using the angle to find whether it's the opposite but we haven't found an angle.
This that we did last time. What's trigonometry?
Those were just the basic ideas of the functions and how to label the sides. Okay? So if you know an angle and a side length, then you can solve for any other side length. Okay? So here's the important part of this. We know an angle and a side length. 1. To use Pythagoras, we would have to have how many side lengths? 2. But we're not going to know that. Instead, we're going to know the angle and the side. And if we do, we can use the trig functions to find out what the measurement is for the other side. Okay? So that's our goal today. Don't worry about it. You don't know how yet. That's just what we're going to be doing. Okay? All right. So for example, here we have a right triangle. And we have some pieces. We have an angle. I know the length of one side, and this is the length that I'm looking for. So in other words, I'm not using this side at all. I don't care. They want me to use this side and find this side. So if I know an angle and I'm looking for the sides, that's when you have to use trig. Okay? Now what if I had that side and this side? Would I have to use trig to find this side? No, I could use Pythagorean formula, right? But okay, so we're going to have to use trig to figure that out. So your first step, there's some things you have to think about there. Okay, first step is to label the triangle. And again, when you're labeling with trig, everything revolves around that angle that we know. Yes? The angle straight across from it is called the what? Opposite. The angle straight across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. And the one that we're not going to be dealing with at all in this case is the adjacent. Right? So, we've labeled our triangle. Second, we need to decide which ratio to use. Okay? And in this case, I have opposite and hypotenuse. So which one is that? So, right? Okay? So just looking at the information that you're given, you can decide which trig ratio to use. Okay? Step 3. Fill in the known values. Again, they're going to tell you some pieces of this. So remember, if you expand this, it means the sine of your angle is equal to opposite over hypotenuse, right? That's what SO stands for. That's your key. Do I know the angle? Yeah. Yes. So it's sine of 40 degrees. Now, many times, most of the time, they're going to put that in a bracket. That's not really like a normal bracket. That's just showing you that that's your angle. It is not 100% necessary to put the bracket there. If it's going to confuse you, don't. Okay? Equals. What is my opposite in this case? X, right? They give you the value there. It's X. So that goes in place of that. What is my hypotenuse? 7. So all I've done is fill in the known values. And then finally, solve the equation. And this is where all the work is. Okay? So we're going to solve this equation. The first step in solving any equation is to eliminate the what?
Brackets.
Brackets. Do I have any? No. What do I look for next?
Fraction.
Do I have any? Yes. So I have a fraction here. So that means divide by 7. The opposite of divide by 7 is to... And I do that on which side? Both sides. So I'm going to multiply that side by 7. I'm going to multiply this side by 7. Okay? To get rid of the fractions. Now over here, the 7s are going to eliminate each other, and that gives me just my plain old x. On this side, I have to multiply these two things together. So all we're going to do is just put that in your calculator. You're going to put 7 times, then you'll find your sign key, and put in 40. And that's going to give you a value. Everybody have your calculators?
I do. It's 4.5.
4.5?
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
It's like rounded.
Did you round it to one decimal place or what? Okay. Rounded to one decimal place, it's 4.5. Okay.
Well, it's basically rounded to because it's 4.49951.
Okay. All right. And so your job is to make sure that you're in degrees. Remember, I told you to make sure you look up how to put your calculator in degrees. If you end up with some negative number, then that tells you that you're in radians, and that's not correct. And again, all your calculators are different. We'll talk about it later, but not important right now. Okay? All right? Then, but we need to be in degrees. And that's all there is to it. So most of the work involved is in deciding which trig ratio to use, and then solving the equation. Okay? Other than that, your calculator does most of the work for you. Okay? Which should make you happy. Okay? So we're just going to do several of these, exact same thing. Nothing ever changes on these. Yes, ma'am?
So, oh wait, no, never mind. I'm good. Never mind. I'm good.
Okay? All right. So let's look at some more. Let's look at some more. Okay. All right, so they just plugged in what they knew, identified the pieces that they knew and where they came from, which gave us the function so, which is the sine of the angle over the a equals the opposite over the hypotenuse. They plugged in the information just like we did, and then they took the sine of 40. Don't worry about what they did, because they're going to soon not do that bit because they took a shortcut. Don't want a shortcut. Here we go.
They times it.
Don't do that. Because you're not going to be able to, if you're going to get a decimal, you're going to round it and it's going to throw your answer off. And you can't do it if you're doing the division anyway. So just clear the fractions. You'll trust me. Well, you'll see that's what they resort to do in a moment as well. All right, here we go. So first thing is to what?
Label the triangle.
Label. Here's your angle, right? So this angle, this 11 that's straight across from the right angle is the what? Hypotenuse. This one is right up against the angle, so that's the what? Adjacent. So what uses adjacent and hypotenuse? Ka. There you go. Which is the cosine of the angle equals the adjacent over the hypotenuse. Right? So easy to get your formula. Just make sure you're careful in your labeling. Now we're just going to plug in the things we know. All right? So decide which function is the next step. Then just substitute is what that is when you plug a number in place of the unknowns. So cosine, do I know the angle? Yes. What is it? 30 degrees. Okay. Do I know the adjacent? No, so they called it P. We'll just leave it as P. Do I know the hypotenuse? Yes, it's 11. Okay?
But how do you know you're doing cos? Because that's the one you've got.
Because that's the only one that uses A and H. All right, now, we need to solve the equation. First thing you look for are brackets. Do you have any? Nope. What do you look for next? Fractions. Do you have any? Yes. And the fraction, that it says divide by 11. What's the opposite of divide by 11? Multiply by 11. Where?
Both sides.
Both sides. Over here, the 11s are simply going to divide away, which leaves me my p all by itself. That's the whole point.
What did you just do?
I just divided by 11, which eliminates the fractions.
Why did you divide it by 11?
Because that was the denominator. You always multiply by the denominator. Now over here, this says take 11 times the cosine of 30 degrees, right? So in your calculator, you'll just put 11 times the cosine of 30. And what is that going to give you rounded to 2 decimal places? 9.53. And that's rounded to 2 decimal places, yes? So after you clear the fractions, then in this case, it's simply a matter of plugging it into your calculator. It won't always be because your variable can move around, right? So you've got to be aware. Yes, ma'am?
This is the stats for trigonometry, right?
For finding the missing angle during using the trig functions. Okay? All right, so our last step, of course, was solve. Okay? All right. So the only thing that's really going to change is which pieces you're using, which will determine a different trig function, right? So, ka, or toa. And when you're solving the equation, your variable can be in different places. Your unknown could either be in the top or the bottom of that fraction. And so that's going to change things a little bit. All right, let's look at another one. Show you what I mean. Okay. So again, they just identified the pieces. And that gave you the right trig function to use, which is the cosine. This time they did clear the fractions, so I'm telling you, well, last time they didn't, but for some reason, but this time they did. And there's their answer. They rounded it. They didn't round it at all. And then they decided to round your answer to 2 decimal places. If that's the convention they're using, then that's the convention we'll use. So 2 decimal places for your answer, if there are 2 decimal, of course. Okay? All right. Also notice that they gave you a sentence for the answer. So the length of the adjacent side is 9.53 units long. What if it had meters or centimeters or something? You'd put those units in. Okay? All right. Okay? Let's just do this one together. We're just going to label the sides. So if this is my angle, the one straight across from it is the what? Opposite. The one right next to it is the?
Adjacent.
And the one across from the right angle is always the?
Hypotenuse.
Yeah, no, but I like to drag. Okay? All right. Identify the equation we would use to write down this triangle. Well, here's our angle. So am I using opposite? No. Okay? So what I have, okay? So what I have is I have the hypotenuse and I have the adjacent. So that's cosine of what's the angle? 47 degrees. If you don't forget the degrees, it's wrong, guys. Okay? Equals the A over what? 13. So M over 13. Okay?
Great. Can you check the answer?
Yes, I'll check the answer. Okay? So, there it is. You're not trusting me? Okay. All right. So you have a few of those. Okay? Let's see. Now, yes, we're not quite ready yet. All right. So when you're solving, you're gonna eliminate that denominator by multiplying by the denominator. You're gonna clear the fractions, in other words. And when you do that, the ones we looked at, the denominator was a number, 7 or 11 we used last time, yes? But your unknown, your variable, could also be in the denominator. That doesn't change the process that you use for clearing the fraction, but it does change what you're going to have to do. Instead of just having 7 times the cosine of 47 degrees or whatever, you're going to have to divide to get the x by itself. Okay? But just remember, anything multiplied times the letter, you can just divide both sides by that to eliminate it. Yes? The opposite of multiply by whatever is divide by that same thing. But whatever, if you divide both one side, what?
Divide the other side.
There you go. Don't
I'm
be lost.
100% not confused.
I'm so glad. Good. All right, so here are your trig ratios. Do not do this. This is ridiculous and stupid.
What is?
Don't learn the trig ratios in 17 different patterns. Simply solve the equation. Are you going to see more equations in your lifetime?
100%.
Yes. So should you concentrate on memorizing a bunch of shortcuts that you're going to forget in 5 minutes and make it worse?
No.
Or should you concentrate on one method that works always?
One method that works always.
There you go. You want to memorize 5,000 things? Go for it.
The method that works always.
The method that works always. And this ain't it.
Are we meant to memorize?
No, I don't want you to. Okay. Oops.
Wait, so does that stuff not work?
It works, but you don't want to have to memorize 20 different things when you can use one method that works every time.
What's the method?
I'm going to show you. All right, here we go. All right. Here's our thing. Shh, guys. All right. So here's my angle. And straight across from it is something called the what? Opposite. Now this side over here is across from that angle, so that's the hypotenuse, which makes G the adjacent. So which one uses OA? TOA, which is the tangent of the angle equals the opposite over the adjacent.
3 over G.
So the tangent of what angle? 25 what? Degrees, thank you. And the opposite is 3, and the adjacent is G. Okay? Now we just have an equation. So let's solve the equation. What do I look for first? Do you have any? Nope. What do you look for second? Do you have any? Yes.
Oh, we do?
Yeah, we do. Okay. Now, again, right there, that's a fraction. All right.
Good job.
Okay. So that means divide by G. What is the opposite of divide by G? Multiply by what?
G.
G. So we're going to multiply both sides by G. Now over here, there's no thought involved there. That just divides away and leaves you your 3, right? Now over here, we have a G times our tangent. Can I just put G times my tangent in my calculator and get anywhere? No. So I've got to get the G by itself. How is it connected to the tangent? What operation? Multiplication. And the opposite of multiply by tangent is? So we're just going to divide both sides by the tangent of 25.
Oh my gosh.
Wait, what?
So-
Wait, I have to write this. Wait.
Oh, no. It's the same thing as solving an equation. Hold on. Shh. Okay. Hold on. Let's just go backwards, you
I
guys.
don't understand.
No.
Go to the beginning. Start again.
I think I got it.
Well, what
It's
are we
nothing
saying?
new. This is nothing new. This is exactly what we did before. It's just you're dividing by something slightly different. So, it's the tangent, okay? Tangent of 25 equals 3 over G. I need to eliminate the fractions by multiplying by G.
Wait, this is
All right.
still escaping me. I need
What? Because G is in the bottom. That's going to eliminate the G's on this side and give me G times the tangent of 25 degrees equals 3. Right? Well, yeah. Hold on a minute. You can't. No, you're not. All I've done was multiply by the common denominator. This is not new, guys. Now, is my G by itself? No. What's over there with it? Tangent of 25 degrees. What operation is connecting G and tangent?
Multiplication.
And what is the opposite of multiply? So I'm just going to divide by not the G. I want to leave the G. So I'm going to divide by the tangent of 25 degrees. And whatever I do to one side, what? Now over here, these two things are identical, and so they just divide away. What does that leave me with on this side? G, okay? And then I can use my calculator and just put 3 divided by tangent 25.
I got 6.43.
6.43 rounded to 2 places. And my G is by myself, so I'm done.
Yay.
sorry, Mr. Self, but I'm still writing this.
Okay, write it.
I'm trying my best.
Okay, first of all, here's my angle. That means I have to use trig, right? If I knew only sides, then I would use Pythagoras, right? But this is trig. Okay? So my first step is to label everything. Well, that's my angle. This one straight across is called the opposite. This one across from the right angle is the hypotenuse. And this one right up next to it is called the adjacent. Now, these are the two I'm going to be using, right? So A and H, which trig function? That's ca, right? And ca is cosine of your angle equals adjacent over hypotenuse. Yeah? Now let's fill in the things that we know. So substitute the things that we know. Cosine of what is my angle?
31.
So cosine, thank you. Cosine of, let me fix that, sorry. Cosine of 31 degrees is the adjacent, what is the adjacent? 7 over the hypotenuse, which is C in this case. Okay? So now I've substituted all of those. Then I need to just solve the equation using the steps that we learned from solving equations. How do I know that this thing is an equation, first of all? The equal symbol. Excellent. So, what do I look for first? Brackets. Do you have any? Nope. What do you look for second? Fractions. Do you have any? Yes. In order to clear the fractions, guys, in order to clear the fractions from an equation, I need to multiply by the denominator. So what is the only denominator up there? C. So to clear the fractions, I'm going to multiply how many sides by C? Both sides by C. Now on this side, C divided by C is simply going to divide away. That's the whole point, right? Okay. What does that leave me with on this side of the equal symbol? Just the 7. On this side, I have C times the cosine of 31 degrees, right? I can't multiply C times anything. Right? I've got to get that C by itself. How is that C and the cosine, what operation is holding them together? And what is the opposite of multiply? So I'm going to leave the C, which means I'm going to divide by the cosine of 31 degrees. But if I divide that side by it, what else? I have to divide the other side by exactly the same thing. Now over here, this is something divided by itself, which will divide away. What does that leave me with on this side? C. And on this side, I need to use my calculator to do the math. What am I going to put in? 7 divided by cosine 31.
6.
It comes out evenly to 6?
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Well, 6.0001.
Okay, so it rounds to 6 in the end. Good. So, C is 6. So that means the length of the hypotenuse is 6. And we don't have any units, so it's just plain old 6.
Thanks for that.
Oh, 1-7.
That copy right.
It
copies 6.
No, it can't be 6. That's too small. Yeah.
My one came out as 6.
Can't be 6. Bye. Adjacent can't be longer than the hypotenuse. That's got to be the longest side. So what did you get, Sora?
I got 8.17.
That sounds more like it.
Oh, okay. My one came out 6.
Try it again and see. You might have
I'll try again.
Yeah. Okay.
Tut, 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 puppy.
Okay.